The laughter in the mess hall died the moment the old man spoke his rank. Before that, the place was alive with noise. Forks scraping against tin trays, boots thudding against the concrete floor. The steady hum of the generator pulsing beneath the storm outside. Forward Observation Outpost's Echo Ridge wasn't a glamorous post. It was where the wind met the wire, and men counted the days by the weight of the rain. The clock on the wall read 1942 hours. Before we begin this mission, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Because some stories of courage never made the headlines, but they deserve to be heard. Tell us where you're watching from and who's the hero in your family. Lieutenant Jack Razor Colburn lounged at the far table with his team, 6 men deep. Each one with the posture of someone who thought they'd already seen everything worth seeing. The veterans, older staff, logistics handlers, mechanics sat clustered near the heater, listening, half amused, half irritated. And then there was the old man. He sat alone near the back wall, the light flickering over a weathered face. His uniform was plain, naval fatigues, sleeves rolled once, but there was something about the way he carried himself. Straight spine, quiet eyes. His name tape read Mercer. No one seemed to know much else. Bet he's one of those supply guys, Sparks said with a smirk. Moves, crates, counts bullets, tells stories about back in his day. Razor chuckled. Yeah, back when we paddled to war in wooden boats, right? The table laughed. Even Master Chief Harker, the mess overseer, cracked a thin smile before returning to his mug. The old man didn't look up. Outside, thunder rolled closer, the kind that shook the metal beams. Leah echoed Tramfrom sat at the counter, nursing her coffee and watching the exchange like she already knew where it was heading. Razor leaned back, tapping his fork against his tray. Hey, old-timer, he called out. What's your story? You wanted the museum pieces they forgot to retire. No answer. Come on, Razor pushed, his grin wide. You look like you've seen a few frogmen in your time. What was your rank back in the dinosaur days? The veterans near the heater shifted uncomfortably. A few glanced toward Mercer. Still, no response. The only sound was the rain on the tin roof and the faint crackle of a radio somewhere on Channel 5 Alpha. Then Mercer lifted his head. Slowly, deliberately. His eyes met Razor's, calm and unblinking. Command Master Chief, he said quietly. Task Force Valkyrie. The words hung in the air like smoke. Someone dropped a fork. It clattered against the floor, echoing through the silence that followed. Razor frowned, his grin faltering. Come again? Mercer didn't repeat himself. He just went back to his meal, cutting into the cold meat as if nothing had happened. But around him, the room had changed. Every man there had heard the name Task Force Valkyrie, but only in rumors. A Black Ops ghost unit from a generation ago. It's a kind of team whose missions weren't on record, but whose outcomes were studied in tactical briefings with no names attached. Valkyrie, Sparks whispered. That's not real. Wasn't supposed to be, muttered one of the older staff. They disbanded that after Grid 6 Delta. Nobody walked out. Razor's jaw tightened. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. Yeah, sure. And I'm Neptune's grandson. Mercer didn't look up this time. Believe what you want, son. The word son hit like a challenge. For a few tense seconds, no one moved. The generator buzzed. The rain hammered harder. Outside, lightning flashed across the ridge, illuminating the perimeter wire like a silver scar. Harker finally broke the tension. All right, enough shop talk, he said, voice firm. Eat up. We've got patrol briefs at 2100, but the atmosphere didn't return to normal. The laughter didn't restart. Mercer finished his meal in silence, stood, and carried his tray to the bin. He moved like a man used to routine, measured, efficient, unhurried. The kind of discipline that never fades. As he passed Razor's table, the lieutenant found himself studying the old man's hands, steady, scarred, calloused. There were faded tattoo lines beneath the wrist, a winged spear, old Navy ink, the kind they'd stopped using decades ago. "Hey," Razor called, softer this time. "You really served with Valkyrie." Mercer paused. The rain filled the gap. "Serving never really stops," he said. And then he walked out, boots echoing down the narrow corridor. Echo watched him leave, her brow furrowed. "You should probably read more before running your mouth, Lieutenant." Razor forced a grin. "Relax, Tran. He's probably just spinning sea stories." "Then why did Harker stop laughing?" she asked. Razor glanced toward the Master Chief. The man's face was unreadable, but his knuckles were white against his coffee mug. By 2015 hours, the mess hall had emptied. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of wet dust and ozone. Razor lingered at the window, watching the faint silhouette of Mercer crossing toward the barracks. The old man's steps were slow, but there was a precision to them, like someone counting distance, marking terrain, still measuring threat and cover after all these years. Razor muttered to himself, "Command Master Chief. Huh." He turned away, but the thought wouldn't let go. The stories of Valkyrie, the strike team that vanished after an off-grid extraction gone wrong, were told in whispers at training camps, half myth, half warning. They were said to have done missions even the SEALs never logged. And this quiet, gray-haired man was claiming he'd led them. In the barracks, Mercer sat on the edge of his bunk. He reached under the bed frame and pulled out an old duffel-worn canvas, faded tag stitched to the side. His fingers traced the insignia embroidered there, a silver wing crossed by a trident. He closed it again without opening it. In the distance, a roll of thunder moved across the ridge, followed by a faint click on the comms. Channel 5 Alpha flickered once, static, murmuring. "Grid breach, ... false alarm." Mercer's gaze drifted toward the dark horizon through the window. The storm wasn't just weather, he felt it. The shift in air pressure, the electric scent of something waiting. He exhaled through his nose, slow and even, the way he used to before a mission. Back in the mess hall, Razor finished his coffee, still trying to convince himself the name meant nothing. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that the old man's reply hadn't just been a story. It had been a warning. And at Echo Ridge, warnings had a way of coming true before sunrise. The next challenge was already waiting beyond the wire. The alarm split the night just as Razor muttered, "Guess the old man's bedtime's over." At 22:05 hours, the storm had settled into a constant, punishing rhythm. Sheets of rain struck the metal rooftops of Forward Observation Outpost Echo Ridge, drumming over the faint hum of generators. Inside the barracks, men half asleep sprang upright as the siren's shriek tore through the compound. Red emergency lights flashed against wet walls, painting the corridor in pulses of blood-colored light. Razor was already halfway to the door, combat vest slung over one arm, rifle in hand. "Co, what have we got?" He barked into his shoulder mic. Leah Tran's voice came through static. Multiple hits on the east fence. Motion sensors tripped, then jammed. "I'm trying to get visuals, but comms are cutting." "Could be a false alarm," Spark said, tightening the strap on his helmet. "Could be," Razor replied, chambering around, "but we're not gambling tonight." Outside, the compound was chaos, men rushing into position, the rain turning the ground into liquid gravel. Visibility was barely 20 meters, maybe less. Red floodlights flickered through the mist, struggling against the dark. Razor's team formed up fast 5 silhouettes in soaked uniforms, rifles held tight. "Bravo team, move east. Check grid 62 Delta. Report on contact," Razor ordered. The acknowledgement crackled back through the comms, broken by distortion. Lightning ripped across the ridge, and for a moment the world was stark white, wire fences, sandbags, the distant outline of the observation tower. Then Razor saw him. Mercer standing by the mess hall doorway, rain plastering his gray hair to his forehead. No weapon visible, just the same steady presence as before. Razor grimaced. You should stay inside, old man. Mercer stepped forward, voice low but clear, even through the storm. You're heading to the east fence. Yeah. Routine perimeter check. We'll handle it. Mercer nodded once. If it were routine, your sensors wouldn't be down. Razor hesitated. The veteran's tone wasn't sarcastic. It was factual, precise. Like he was already visualizing the map in his head. Mercer adjusted the strap on his rain jacket. They'll hit you from the low ground. 2 points of entry, both blind in this weather. They'll draw your eyes to the wire and flank from the access road. Sparks laughed nervously. You psychic or something? Mercer looked past him, toward the eastern ridge. I've seen this play before. Against his better judgment, Razor motioned him along. Fine, stay behind me. If you fall, I'm not dragging you back. The 6 of them moved out into the storm, boots sinking into the mud, rifles cutting through the rain. The base behind them faded into darkness and siren glow. A Razor scanned through his NVGs. Nothing but fog and static interference. Echo, this is Razor 1, he said. We're on the east approach. Any feed yet? Negative, came her strained reply. Cameras are looping. I'm getting ghost readings. Be advised, signal interference near your position. Copy that. Stay on 5 Alpha. They reached the first fence line. The wire sagged under the rain, glinting faintly in the flash of lightning. Razor crouched, motioning his men to spread. Sparks took left's flank. Diaz covered rear. Mercer stood perfectly still, scanning the darkness like he could hear something the others couldn't. Then Mercer spoke quietly. Contact 300 meters, bearing 180. Razor froze. He looked through his scope, nothing. Just mud and haze. How can you movement? A flicker of shadow near the access road. Razor's gut dropped. Eyes on, he whispered. Multiple shapes, low crawl. Possible hostiles. The team took position. Suppressors clicked. Echo, we've got movement, confirm. Static. Echo, do you copy? More static. Then a burst of broken words. Signal cut ambush. The radio died. Mercer didn't wait for orders. They're trying to flank. Left side, move now. Razor hesitated only a second, then gestured. Sparks, with me. Gunfire erupted, muffled, sharp cracks under the storm. Muzzle flashes lit the rain for an instant. The first hostile dropped. 2 more advanced from the right, returning fire. Razor dove behind a storage crate, mud splattering across his face. Where the hell did they come from? Sparks shouted. Doesn't matter, Razor growled. We hold this line. Mercer was already in motion, moving with uncanny precision for a man his age. He used the terrain like second nature, slipping between cover points, barking crisp commands that carried through the chaos. Diaz suppressed at grid marker. Razor, shift right, you're exposed. Razor moved without thinking. A burst struck the mud where he'd crouched seconds before. He glanced at Mercer, disbelief tightening his chest. How focus, Mercer snapped. 2 more left, on my mark. Lightning revealed his silhouette, shoulders squared, one hand raised. Pure command. Mark, they fired. Hostiles dropped, silence falling over the storm. Razor panted, rain stinging his skin, eyes fixed on Mercer. Echo, Razor 1, perimeter breach contained. For down, no friendly casualties. Mercer checked gear.com. Not locals, just a probe. They were testing you, Razor swallowed. Ooh, AU. Mercer's eyes scanned the ridge. Not done yet. Razor exhaled, lowering his rifle. The respect forming in his chest was grudging but real. The old man wasn't bluffing, and whatever task Force Valkyrie had been, its commander hadn't forgotten a thing. The night was far from over, and by dawn, they would all learn what those 3 words truly meant. By dawn, no one saw him as just an old veteran anymore. The storm had passed, leaving Echo Ridge damp and silent. The early light crept over the ridgeline, casting long shadows across mud-slicked paths and sandbags still littered from the night's chaos. Razor and his team moved cautiously back toward the central compound, the tension of the perimeter breach still coiling in their muscles. Faces were pale, breaths uneven, eyes scanning every corner. The air smelled of wet metal and earth, mingling with the faint tang of spent gunpowder. Mercer walked ahead, unhurried, his boots pressing down into the sodden ground with precision. He carried no weapon now, just the authority of command emanating from him in every step. The younger SEALs fell silently into formation behind him, each feeling the weight of his presence as they had the night before, but now with a grudging reverence. Echo, status on medevac and casualty teams. Mercer's voice was low, calm, unshakable. Teams in position, Leah Tran replied, her tone steady despite fatigue. Evac routes secure. All wounded accounted for. Rotor is inbound. Mercer nodded once, scanning the ridge with a trained eye. Maintain grid coverage. No movement until sunrise. Check the perimeter once more, then report. Razor exchanged glances with Sparks and Diaz, watching the old man issue commands without hesitation. Every detail was perfect: time, distance, approach, vectors, extraction points, executed with the finesse of someone who had done this thousands of times. The team had been operating together for years, but Mercer's instinct and precision dwarfed their training. Razor 1, this is Echo Actual. Valkyrie Command checking in. All positions confirmed. Medevac inbound in 4 mics, Leah said over the comms. Razor's jaw tightened. He had heard the name before, whispered stories of a unit whose missions were legendary, whose men were ghosts in classified files. And now that same name was moving through the radio like it had never left. Rotor blades hummed over the ridge. The medevac hovered, settling with precise grace, mud and debris thrown into the clearing. Mercer directed medics with quiet authority, gestures sharp and unmissable. The younger SEALs mirrored his every move. Captain Eldridge arrived, pausing to exchange a silent salute with Mercer, a wordless acknowledgement of shared history. The bird lifted, leaving a calm, ordered compound. Razor approached, breath heavy. Who are you, really? Mercer met his gaze, steady. Oh, the one who trained the men who trained you. Silence sank over them. The weight of Task Force Valkyrie settling like stone. The team gathered in the mess hall later, rain-streaked and mud-spattered. They stood quietly, exhausted, yet their posture had shifted. Mercer walked to the center, his presence commanding attention without demanding it. Razor stepped forward, chest swelling with a newfound respect. He snapped a sharp salute. Sir. Mercer nodded once, slow and deliberate. His eyes were distant, focused on some horizon beyond the ridge, beyond the compound. Beyond the reach of the young SEALs who had watched him move mountains tonight. There was no pride in his expression, only acknowledgement, the quiet satisfaction of a mission carried out, a unit intact, a legacy preserved. Outside, the sun began to rise, burning through the dissipating fog. Golden light touched the metal surfaces of the outpost, turning the wet mud to shimmer. The storm that had threatened the ridge hours before now seemed distant, almost inconsequential. The morning air was clean, the silence profound, and in it lay the unspoken truths of what had passed. The younger SEALs watched Mercer as he retrieved his insignia patch from the duffel bag, the silver wings glinting in the dawn. He fastened it carefully to his jacket, methodical and precise, the emblem a silent testament to a life of service, sacrifice, and expertise that few could ever comprehend. Razor looked around at his team, then back at the old man. Words failed him. The weight of what they had witnessed settled on each of them, skill honed to perfection, leadership that transcended age, and a presence that commanded loyalty without question. Mercer had not just saved them, he had shown them the standard to which they would now measure themselves. Echo Ridge secure, came the faint radio crackle from Leah. Razor exhaled slowly. Relief mingled with awe. He had seen danger, but what he had just witnessed was something different. A living legend, moving through the chaos of a storm, unshakable and undeniable. In that moment, the young SEALs understood that some leaders were born from battle, forged in operations that never made the record books. And some legends didn't need introductions. The sun rose fully over Echo Ridge, casting long, clear light over the men and the base, signaling the end of the night and the beginning of a hard-earned day. The story of Mercer and the legacy of Task Force Valkyrie had only just begun to settle in their minds, promising challenges yet unseen.